14 WILI and 95.3 FM presents Hometown Threads, a closer look at our community and the people that make it go. Every week, you'll hear uplifting stories from our local businesses and our neighbors. Now, here's our host for Hometown Threads, Keith C. Rice.
Episode 34 of Hometown Threads on WILI. Actually, I had to look up, used to looking over here. We're in a different studio this time around. Doing Hometown Threads on 14 WILI and 95.3 FM. It's Keith C. Rice. Of course, we're on Willimantic Today Facebook. Hometown Threads comes your way every Tuesday on WILI from 5:05 to 5:30. And then we share the show from my personal Keith C. Rice Facebook page onto Willimantic Today, and they pin it atop their page, and it runs Wednesday and throughout the week. Hometown Threads, of course, brought to you by Liberty Bank. Be community kind. With three great local locations, Gateway Commons, West Main Street, Willimantic, across the street from the radio station, 679 Main Street, Willimantic, and Route 195 in Mansfield, Liberty Bank, be community kind. If we were in our main studio, this time I would actually hand the Liberty Bank mug to J. Matt Rupar and say hello to the fine folks. So J. Matt Rupar, without handing you the mug, say hello to everyone.
Hello.
Big thanks to our producer, J. Matt Rupar, and of course the fine folks at Willimantic Today on Facebook. And here we go with episode 34. It's a pleasure to bring in a friend of mine who we actually were at a dinner. I was a couple years ago, I think a couple summers ago, through a mutual friend. And Jim Esposito is with us, former WILI newsman, right?
Yes, everything I've ever done is former.
Okay. Anyway, Jim and I were at a dinner party a couple of years ago, and we were outside. Once I found out you worked for WILI in the 70s, we just didn't talk about that. We talked about everything. Meanwhile, the party goes indoors. Jim and I are still outside. It's dark. It's like, they're probably wondering, are Keith and Jim going to come inside? Story after story from this guy. But it's a pleasure to bring in here. You're now let me get this right, adjunct professor. Did I say the word right?
Yes, you did.
At QVCC and ECSU.
That's correct. A lot of letters.
But you also spent 28 years in the radio industry.
That's correct.
How many years total at WILI?
Oh, I think only about 2.
Only about 2? I kept thinking it was more than that.
No. Well,
is he close enough to the mic?
Yeah, he's good.
4 or 5 in Willimantic between WILI and WXLS.
That's right. He was on 98.3 before 98.3 was I-98.3. They were WNOU and WXLS. So we'll get into all that. But as we like to do at the top of every episode here of Hometown Threads, I'd like to really go way back. Tell us about how Jim Esposito has been in this community with his lovely wife Sue, who's, you may see her on the shopping carts at Big Y, big time real estate agent.
Oh yeah, I'm Sue's husband. That's my name. It's no longer Jim. It's Sue's husband. So.
Oh yeah, big time all-star real estate agent. But you're not from this area originally, the Naugatuck Valley, right?
Naugatuck Valley, the beautiful Naugatuck Valley. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Beacon Falls. That is directly below Waterbury, and through Naugatuck and then Beacon Falls. And I went to school there, grammar school, high school. And the day after, I wasn't there much longer after high school. The day after high school, I was down in the basement with my friends. My dad came down and said, "Hey, I need you to do this." And I said, "Keep your shirt on. I'll be ready in a little bit."
You said those exact words?
I said those words to my father. Big mistake. Yeah.
Man is Italian, Esposito.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he grabbed me by the shirt, slapped me a couple of times, and dragged me upstairs in front of my friends.
In front of your friends?
In front of my friends.
Okay.
So the next morning I got up about 5 o'clock, took the money that I had, which wasn't much, went up to Waterbury, hitchhiked to Waterbury, back when hitchhiking was a regular thing, right? And I got on the first bus that was leaving, and it was going to Washington, D.C. So I wound up in Washington, D.C., never been away from home on my own before, and I sat in the train station for about an hour trying to figure out what I was going to do.
Were you kind of nervous? You had to be very nervous.
Oh, I was thinking about going back home.
18 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a kid today,
Right.
18, but I was naive as all get out. Anyway, I had an uncle who was a cab driver in New York. He said, if you ever get lost, hail a cab. So I went out of the train station. Of course, there's a whole row of cabs. So I said, oh, I'm in good shape here. So I got in a cab. I said, never been in Washington, D.C. before. Don't know anything about it. I need a place to stay, someplace inexpensive. He brought me to a rooming house called Hartnett Hall on 21st and P Street, $21 a week, 10 meals a week, and that's where I stayed. So the first 3 or 4 days, I didn't know what to do. I'm wandering around Washington, just looking at the sights, and finally I see a sign, Career Academy of Famous Broadcasters. And I know that most people, because they're not 76 years old like I am, won't know these names, but John Cameron Swayze, first NBC news anchor, TV news anchor, John St. John, who was the preeminent reporter during the Second World War for all three networks, and Fran Allison, who had a little children's show called Kukla, Fran, and Ollie on NBC. And they own the station, they own the school, and so I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be in radio. So I went to the school. It was 6 months. I graduated, third class FCC license, and went home.
Back then, they really checked your licenses too. The FCC
Oh, yeah.
license. Yeah.
And I started to work for WOWW in Naugatuck, Connecticut, daytime station, which of course signed off at sunset. Well, fortunately for me, it was June, and they needed someone to fill after the afternoon drive from 6 to when the station went off the air.
How old were you now? Were you 20 at this point, or?
Oh no, I was 18 and a half, let's say.
Oh, that's okay. Wow.
Right.
All right.
So, or close to 19 anyway. So I get this job. It's for Saturday and Sunday only, 6 to sign off. First night I go on, I'm telling jokes on a beautiful music station.
Come on.
Oh yeah, I'm telling. Oh God, it was awful. And then I had to do the news. You had to rip and read and do a 5-minute newscast. And of course, I have dyslexia, which made it a little bit more difficult. But I did it, and I couldn't find the news sounder.
Uh-oh.
You know, so the 8-track cart with it's 6 o'clock, time for news on WOWW. I couldn't find it. You know, and then it had the diddy, and it would fade off.
Wow, you were working on WOW, right?
Wow, exactly. We could do a skit here, you know. Anyway,
I'm sure your jokes were better.
yeah. So anyway, I did the news, and then at the 7 o'clock hour, I was looking around for the cart, and sure enough, it was behind the equipment rack. And
Now, let me jump in for a second. Carts, you can help me with this too. Carts back in the day, for those of you who may be wondering what a cart was in radio, it's actually how we played a commercial. We'd take it was like a rectangular cartridge, and we'd stick it in the machine. I don't know, J-Mad Rupar, remember carts?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen them, but
But that's
Yeah.
before, now everything's digital, but that's how we would play, we'd have cart
It was
machines.
analog,
Analog,
And,
right.
and inside that box was a piece of tape, and so it recorded on that tape,
Yes, thank you, Jim. That's
and
right.
then it would play, and then it would keep going until it hit the electronic spot, and it would stop and be queued up for the next person who put it
We
in.
used to have a cart cleaner right over here, actually.
Yeah.
You
So-
could bulk it.
So anyway, I'd throw this card in, time for news on WOWW, diddy, and I start the news, and the phones are flashing. We never got a call, but the phones are flashing.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm saying, who could be calling me now? They must know I'm alone here. And so I do 5 minutes of news, I do a minute of sports, I do the weather.
Rip and read just off the wire?
Oh yeah, the yellow paper. I mean, you don't retype.
Sure.
It's right there. So I do it, and I finish, and I have my finger on the record. I hit the switch. I'm doing a flying cue, right? I lift my finger. Boom. We're going to music. I pick up the phone, and he said, "This is the owner. You've been off the air for 7 minutes."
Oh my God. Oh.
The reason Descartes was behind the equipment because it had a high frequency bump on it that hit back in those days. If the frequency went crazy and went up and was going to interfere with another station, it shut the station down.
You know what I thought you were going to say? When the phones are ringing, because I thought you were going to say, "Hey, your microphone's still on," because you're talking to the owner, whatever.
Right.
But wow, so that was your first.
It was wow, yes.
Yes, wow.
Wow, yeah.
You got
Red
me-
Carpet Radio for Naugatuck.
So, how
I
many
made
years?
$3 that first night.
Does that station still exist, by the way?
I have no idea.
You should know that, really.
Well, I don't.
All right.
I'll
I'll have to look it up after. So,
Okay.
how many years were you at WOW?
No, we don't count in years. We
No.
count in weeks.
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 Okay. How many
Yeah.
weeks were you at WOW?
I was at probably about 10 weeks. The guy who was on before me said, I'm going to Florida to get my first class FCC license. You want to come? I said, sure.
Really? Both you guys worked at WOW, and he said now you're jumping in a car going to Florida with this guy to
Yeah.
get your license?
Yeah.
Okay. FCC license.
And the reason you wanted and needed a first class FCC license back then was if you were on the air, if the station was on the air, there had to be a first class FCC engineer in the building.
They're very
24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
They were very strict on this back in the
Right.
day. Yeah.
So I figured, you can hear my voice. I sound more like Jerry Lewis than than a radio announcer. And I figured with my voice and my limited ability, if I had a first-class FCC license, they could hire me and get 2 for 1.
Right.
They wouldn't have to have a first-class guy on.
Okay.
So that's what I did. I went down,
You get what part of Florida?
Tampa.
So you and this
Oh, I'm
guy.
sorry, Sarasota.
You and this guy drive to Sarasota.
Right. We go to this school, which was basically I can say this because they're no longer. I'm not going to tell you the name of the school, but they're no longer in business. What they basically did was they sent engineers in to take first-class FCC exams every day, sometimes 8, 10 people, and there were 8 FCC exams that you never knew which one you were going to get. They would take the exams, remember as many questions as they could, come back and write down the questions. And the school was basically you memorize the answers to the questions, and then you go take the test.
Thank goodness I never had to go through any of that.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys did this.
Then this was in the fall, and then by December we had graduated. On the 23rd of December, we took a swim down in Miami. That's where we were taking the test, and we drove straight through to Connecticut
Back
for
to Connecticut.
Christmas.
Okay.
And I got home, and my father handed me an envelope, and I opened it, and it said, "Congratulations, your friends and neighbors have selected you to serve in the United States Army."
How about this? He gets his FCC license, ready to do radio, and he's going to get into the military.
Going to Vietnam.
To Vietnam. Wow. Okay. So now, take us through this a little.
Well, I didn't want. I had a friend who graduated from high school with me. There was a group of 5 of us, and you have a group of friends you hang out with in high school. And one of the guys, this is really his name. His name was Hearn Beaver.
That's a great radio name.
It was. And maybe a reason why I got into it. But Beav, obviously, it was the same as the Leave It to Beaver show. But
Jim Esposito's with us, by the way. Episode 34 of Hometown Threads on 14 WILI
Yeah.
and 95.3 FM Willimantic Today Facebook. Brought to you by Liberty Bank. Be community kind. But go ahead. Okay, so now Vietnam.
So he went off right after high school. He joined the Marines, went right to Vietnam. He lasted 2 weeks, and there wasn't enough of him to send home.
Hearn Beaver.
Hearn Beaver stepped on a mine.
Oh, my God.
And there is a bridge in Beacon Falls named after him, but, who wants that kind of honor?
Wow.
So I was really a little bit, just a touch afraid
Yeah.
of going to Vietnam. And of course there were, several 100,000 guys over there, and basically the idea was send enough people over there, maybe we'll win the war. But that of course never happened. Anyway, So instead of going into the Army, I went into the Air Force.
Okay.
And they told me I was going to be on Armed Forces Radio. And after 13 weeks of boot camp, I got out, and they said, you're going to be an electrician up 70 miles north up in Austin at Bergstrom Air Force Base. I said, whoa, wait a minute.
What about Armed Forces Radio?
I said, what about Armed Forces Radio? You know, I have a first-class FCC license, you know, electronics. And the trainer there said, hey, electrical, electronic, it's the same damn thing. Anyway, son, you're going to go where the Air Force wants you to go. So you salute and walk away.
Wow.
So 2 years in Texas with a combat support group. We were the guys that parachuted in. And then our organization, our company got orders for Cambodia. 2 guys didn't go, me and one other guy. He went to Germany, I went to Italy. And I
Okay.
spent the last 2 years in Italy.
Okay, so now, after the Air Force, it's radio, right?
It's WHUS because I went
So you
to
come back to
college
Connecticut. Oh, you went to college at UConn.
at UConn, and that's when I moved to this area in 1971. Actually, 1972.
So wait a minute. All right, 72, HUS, UConn. Did you rub elbows with the big guy, Wayno? Wayno was probably still... Well, Wayno was just coming here, actually. He was at HUS in 70, correct?
Yeah, but I worked for WHUS. There was really, back then...
The Wayno started here in 70. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Back then, UConn sports weren't what they are today.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nobody
yeah.
watched them. Nobody went to the game. Not many people. I did play-by-play for WHUS. That was the only radio station that broadcasted the game.
Right. For what sport?
For you name it.
Okay, so you were... I never knew you were doing play-by-play for HUS.
Oh, man, I was, come on.
Wow.
I was terrible, but,
Like,
I was...
you're there to learn anyway. I mean,
that's right,
but-
right.
So you're doing that in the early 70s. Okay, so you're at HUS. That's how Dave Evan and Wayno connected and came here. But so what happens at 72 at HUS? You
Well, I graduated from that's
UConn.
when I went there, started there. I had a year under my belt. So in 75, I graduated.
okay, graduate from UConn in 75. Now you're really ready to do radio, right?
That's right.
What happens there?
I
after
was
that?
ready to go to Western New York. I had a morning job. And
Fresh out of college, you had a morning offer?
I had a morning. Well, come on! It was I think probably if you put 2 light bulbs together, you had more power coming out of those than you did out of the antenna. It was a little local, station.
Little
you know.
mom and pop
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
deal, yeah.
And so I was going to do mornings, and then I was going to sell in the afternoon. Because
Oh, about that. Double
yeah.
duty.
But just as I was about to accept, I heard, hey, they're opening a new FM radio station in Willimantic.
Just before you accepted the Western New York offer, okay.
Right. That's 1975.
Willimantic, right down the street from stores. So you
Yep.
look into this, and this
Yep.
is WXLS,
Right.
correct? Okay, which is, as you said before, 98.3, which is now I-98.3, which they signed on in 85. So WXLS makes you an offer.
Right. And I was going to do overnights. And back then it was a beautiful music station.
Okay.
And I was going to do overnights and then sell during the day.
Another double. That was a big deal back then. You were on the air and selling, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, they had to be on 24 hours. They really didn't care what happened after midnight.
Right.
Just keep the station on the air.
Who was the program director? You remember that?
Bob Scott.
Okay, Bob Scott.
Yeah, he was also program director at WKND in Hartford.
Not WKRP, WKND.
WKND.
All right.
Right.
Okay, so you accept that position, right?
Right.
Okay.
And then the general manager, a guy named Pete O'Coin.
Really? That's the name, Pete.
Pete O'Coin.
Okay.
Yeah. He at the time came from the Putnam station, which at the time
Winnie?
Winnie,
Okay.
which your family owned
Yep.
at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he came down. He quit that job and came down to be general manager here in Willimantic of the FM radios.
Of XLS.
XLS.
Okay, so how many years? Take us through a little of the XLS days. What your experience there?
Well, I started there in June,
And where were they located again? Was it West Main Street?
West Main Street across from McDonald's.
Yes. Okay. I vaguely remember. I was really young, but I vaguely remember.
Right, in the old house there.
Yep,
across
the old
street.
house. Yeah.
Right, right. I worked for them before they were on the air, about 2 months, and we had a bunch of advertisers ready to go, and we turned the station on, and the second harmonic came right up in the middle of the NBC affiliates color scheme, whatever they called it, the color area. And so all of the people below Hosmer Mountain had no TV.
Oh my
We wrecked
goodness.
every it was static. It was, I mean, it was awful.
Oh my God.
We had people sticking guns through our transmitter thing and shooting them off.
Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, and we had people riding by the station, beeping the horn, throwing us, visual reminders of
Good
what
way to
they
get
thought.
good way to get attention for the station. Maybe we should start doing that. I don't know. I'm kidding.
No, you don't want to do that.
No. You don't want negative press. But anyway,
No.
so
It was touch and go for a few months. We actually turned. I think I told you this last time we talked. We turned the station off at 8 o'clock one night when they had the Red Sox were playing in the World Series, and they were coming over the NBC affiliate from Rhode Island.
so this is 86 probably, right? Yeah.
I probably no, couldn't be that. No, because
Oh,
this
no,
was
it's
in the
85.
70s.
85 was I-98 already.
Right.
So it's
They-
75. 75. Yeah.
Okay, so they're in the playoffs or whatever, and we were getting death threats. I mean, so we turned the station off the air so that people could see TV to watch
This
the
is
Red Sox
insane.
game.
Imagine that.
And then we turned it back on. We tried giving people filters. We tried everything, and the filters helped a little bit. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was the day that the priest from St. Joseph's walked in, and it turns out that he was doing a funeral mass, and our station came over the speakers in the church.
You got to be kidding me.
No. So dearly departed, run on by, So it's
Wow, this is insane.
Yeah. So he came in loaded for bear, and he was going to lead the boycott WXLS.
Now,
No.
how many months removed was the Red Sox thing to the St. Joseph's Church thing? Was it
We're talking days.
okay? You
Days.
guys couldn't catch a break.
No, we couldn't.
Oh,
And then after they shot up our transmitter,
you must have had 0 listeners after all this.
well, I don't know what we had. We kept on playing music,
Wow.
and then the FBI came in.
The FBI.
The FBI
This just gets
because
better and better.
It's a federally licensed facility. You can't shoot up a federally licensed facility.
Holy smokes.
And what happened was, cable started to come in.
Yeah.
And so, as long as you weren't doing over the air, once cable came in, everything was done. Everything was good.
Okay, so this is your Willimantic radio experience.
So far, yeah.
We only have a few minutes left. We
Okay.
could go on and on and on here. You went on after Willimantic. You went on to do some time in Hartford, right?
I worked for DRC for
Okay.
5 years, TIC for a couple, and about 8 years for Merv Griffin at WPOP in 104.
And,
And then I built them a news network, Connecticut State Network, and we syndicated Judy Jarvis out of Hartford, initially on the Star Network, and then eventually she went on to ABC.
okay, so you went on to bigger and better things after Willimantic and worked for the Merv Griffin stuff like that. And how many years were you in Hartford total?
About 15 years.
Okay, then after Hartford was the Otis Elevator.
Correct.
Experience when you were out of radio for a while. You did that for like 10 years.
Yep.
And then it was into teaching, correct?
And it was in teaching. 2003, I started at Quinnebog Valley Community College.
Before we wrap things up, and Jim Esposito's been our guest, adjunct professor at QVCC and ECSU. I usually ask my guests any closing thoughts on, like, maybe briefly, in a nutshell, how are you molding young minds today? Well, you're teaching business. You were teaching. We should mention that. You was teaching radio at one point.
Right.
But you're teaching business. So
Right.
you're not even going near radio. But what were you kind of touching on as far as radio, and briefly, before we wrap things up?
Well, I do teach communication as well.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Business communication and that sort of thing. And my fear is that the consolidation of sources of news is something we need to, I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but we need to realize what's going on. There are far fewer sources of news than ever before.
Yeah.
When I ran WPOP, we had 6 or 7 reporters just at that one station. I'd be surprised if they have 2 reporters in all of radio.
It's unbelievable.
Right now. The Hartford Courant, look at that. They sold that huge building. They now have a couple of offices somewhere. They don't print their own paper. Same thing happened with the Chronicle. I mean, how many reporters did the Chronicle have at the peak of their existence?
We talked about it earlier. Where do people get their news?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and WILI, don't get me wrong. WILI, we still deliver the local news. I want to make that clear. But, people usually, things are coming up on their phones left and right.
Right.
But, yeah, as far as local information, John Tewitt and Wayno, and we all try and deliver the best local information as possible. We've got to keep that.
Well, no,
mention
you're absolutely right. And that's the real strength of this radio station.
Well, we got to wrap things up. I wish we had more time. This
Okay.
man has so many awesome stories. In fact, we never go. My wife said, we got to go home. We were at that dinner party for so long, but I want to thank Jim Esposito for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Episode 34 of Hometown Threads, brought to you by Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind. J. Matt Rupar, thank you. Thanks to the folks at Willimantic today. And that'll do it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And in the words of the great Roddy McCumber,
bye for now, folks. Bye for now.
And that concludes another edition of Hometown Threads. Got a story for Keith? Reach out to him on Facebook by searching Keith C. Rice or email him at krice@hallradio.net. Don't forget to tune in next week on 14 WILI and 95.3 FM, as well as the Willimantic Today page on Facebook.